I'd like to welcome everyone today to our first discussion as a DCX as a business. DCX Bullion was founded in 2018, and we've been specifically in the retail space within Bullion, offering various products from gold, silver, and platinum through the years. But today is mainly we want to just this is us starting this journey online and having an online presence going forward. My name is Deon Rebello, and I'm the CEO of DCX Bullion, and I've got one of my partners with me, Willem Theron. Hi, Willem. How you doing?
Hi, Deon. Good and you, thanks.
So, just to give a bit of a background as to who you are with DCX Bullion, when you started and what's your primary focus within the company.
Well, gee, been a number of years now, and where I started to where I am now is quite the journey indeed. When I originally started, it was to do some copywriting for you guys for your new website, if I'm correct, and that was I think just before the lockdown of 2020.
Yeah.
And since then, obviously, I've grown into different roles, designing new products, research, statistics, all that kind of stuff, up until the point now where, I'm doing a little bit of everything, to be honest.
And you are, and I mean, just to for the sake of the listeners, is we are a very small, tight knit company with specific individuals with a lot of amazing skills that they've brought to this company, and Willem is one of them. And being a small company, we tend to cross over to each other's different roles and what's needed. And yes, we are in a very exciting time. We've gone through a lot of growth over the last couple of years. This year, as we've discussed, is being about creating foundational growth, and putting the business into a position in 2025 where we can really start to drive the bottom line. And essentially, when I started DCX Bullion, it was always about information equaling power to the person in the street. How we even started the business was it was about looking at other options of wealth, mitigating a lot of the risks that we experience, specifically in South Africa, but it's become a global thing. And initially when I started the business, it was just about silver, and silver being an option. I, coming from a mining background, knew very little about silver. I knew a lot about gold because it was part of the sector I was in, and platinum I also knew a lot about. But when it came to silver, I knew very little. And once I started to submerge myself into the thing of silver, it's quite interesting. And I mean, we can throw some of the facts out there straight away that silver, second to oil, is the most used commodity on earth. We look at the current trends globally with the whole green economy being pushed. So anything electrical, anything requiring that would require silver. And we've seen that. Yeah.
Photovoltaic cells is another big one, solar power. I mean, if we're looking at modern technology, it's almost impossible to get away from silver. I mean, we've got silver in our washing powder.
Exactly. But yeah, and just talking about the photovoltaic market, that's run at a 20% growth per annum. And the two biggest markets, we just got to look in our own country, but this applies to anywhere in the world. That over the last couple of years, the growth in solar panels, voltaic panels, has been phenomenal. And as I said, that is sitting right now at a 20% growth per annum. The two biggest markets right now is actually China and India. So the rest of the world is catching up. But yes, so silver's in everything. And then we also look at gold. We look at the world we're in. It's now going into a Trump administration come the new year. And what does that bring? As soon as Trump was voted in, the gold price pulled back it was little bit of a drop, where it pulled under $2,500, but it subsequently went back to $2,600 and hasn't looked back since then.
Yeah, and I think we've also seen a surge at the beginning of this week with some of the US data that's said to be released this week with the deposition of I think it was the Syrian president.
Yes.
It just creates a little bit more tinder for that Middle East matchbox, which has people worried. And because of that, we're seeing an influx of safe haven investment in gold. And along with that, China has just started buying gold again. The Reserve Bank has just started buying gold after, I think it was a 6-month hiatus or something like that. And they're saying that they're adding, I think it's 130 million ounces in November.
Sure.
And all of that has just given gold that boost, and that's why beginning of this week we actually saw that boost coming back up again. And it's sitting very strong around about mid 2600s.
Yeah. So just on that, and that's what's quite interesting with gold right now. And we continually looking at what's happening in the markets. We continually following various market leaders, investment companies throughout the industry to always get a complete view of what's happening in the markets. Interesting enough, 2024 has been a phenomenal year for gold. We had our projections at the beginning of the year, and again, what we do is we look across the board. So some of the industry leaders, as we would term them, were saying, $3,000 an ounce, and some even were saying $10,000 an ounce. But the middle of the road, and this is where a lot of the big banks came in, your JP Morgans, your Goldman Sachs, and so on. They were giving stats of around 2,000, 2,100 if we were lucky. At this stage, you must remember gold was sitting under $2,000 an ounce. It was sitting there with a lot of indications that there was a massive growth path for 2024. The thing is, we anticipated a growth of about $250 and $2,250 an ounce. I know CPM, which is the company that owns the COMEX, they had said that we would achieve $2,250 by 2030, and they were probably and are the most conservative guys when it comes to projections. But that's what we need.
Yeah, I think the World Gold Council actually projected a decline, which was interesting. And as you said, we were looking at about $2,250 an ounce, and we were looking at these predictions of 2,700 and 2,600 thinking, way to be optimistic, guys, but we don't think so. And it just shows you it's so many things happening that can send that price into previously uncharted territories.
Yeah, and again, sitting in December, we're sitting on a price of over $2,600. Current stats in from the States, the CPI has been coming through, and as you mentioned, Syria and a number of other things that has just caused the price to jump again. So with Trump being announced as president, there was a drop, and then it just went back on as business. And that's also a perfect indicator of future growth. We know we're in a commodity boom. We look at commodities across the board. They all have been growing. I mean, platinum, which was the biggest performer of last year and the previous year, has been the slowest performer of this year. It is gaining some momentum that it had lost. But again, that is tied very much to hydrogen power. It's tied to the autocatalytic converter sector and so on. But we look at gold, and just for the sake of this, we know that gold and silver are hedges against economic and political uncertainty throughout the world. Let's talk about 2024 just off the bat. Politically, we see what's happened in the States. We saw the whole build up to the US elections that finally came to some kind of ending now. We know that from January, the Trump administration takes over. But that doesn't mean that America's saved. We know economically, and we'll go into that, but just politically across the board, your thoughts on 2024?
Across the board, it's been not much better than it has been in past years. We've still got the war with Russia and Ukraine raging on. We've got the Israel conflict now. We've got, as I said, Syrian president being deposed. It's all over the place, and especially the Middle East, which is a bit of a matchbox at the moment.
Yeah, and again, I mean, at the beginning of the year, we know with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, it's now going on to, I think, the second year since the
I
invasion.
actually think it's 3.
Or is it 3 years?
It might
Yeah.
be 3, yeah.
But again, so these things kind of like push on, but there's a lot of things starting to happen. North Korea has shown some interest to getting themselves involved in it. I remember.
Some political instability in South Korea as well
Correct.
now. So it's all over the world. It's
Yeah, and we know China has always had a very clear ambition with regards to Taiwan. They believe it is a territory of theirs, and Taiwan believes an independent state. Regardless of who's right or wrong, it affects the world, it affects certainty, and affects all those kind of things.
and it's because of all of this that we've seen the rush to gold at the beginning of this week. We've seen that price go up again. As I said, the safe haven investors looking to buy and to secure their assets in gold once again.
Yeah, and that's the world we're living in. So geopolitically, there's a lot of uncertainty. Even in Europe, there's a lot of issues happening throughout the different governments, and we see that there's a lot of pressure building up, and we had discussed this, and a lot of market commentators have also spoken about that, and now we're going to speak more about the economics. Is that since 2008, where we had that other market correction, there's definitely a move towards some big movements. We've seen performance of the S&P again at all-time highs. It's been pushing up and up and up. But what's motivating that? What's pushing that? And there's a big concern that at some point there's going to be a breaking point, and a market correction slash depression slash recession is on the cards. We've been calling it for the last 2 years, but what we've seen is that gap from uncertainty of when it will happen is getting closer and closer. We see the performance of the US economy. We see the performance of most of the economies throughout Europe. Even in South Africa, we got a different. There's a lot of reasons why our economy is not performing where it should be, but we still are influenced throughout from the rest of the world and what's happening there. Same with China.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think across the world, it's pretty much the same. Everybody is trying to get back on their feet, and I do believe that this is still ripples from the COVID pandemic. I mean, it's not something that has that massive an impact. Doesn't recover overnight, and some countries have done a better job of recovering from that than others. But I think it's still globally, it's still affecting the economy.
Absolutely, and I think if you look at the US Fed, they've also said that a recession is on the cards. They're very apprehensive, is probably not the correct word, but they are concerned on how they address that. Of course, there's a new administration coming in, and of course they're shouting, "Oh, they're going to sort everything out." But again, we go back and we see that this isn't a problem that started now. For monetary policy, or modern monetary policy, where there's no backing of a commodity such as gold. Remember the gold standard in 71, where Richard Nixon removed it from the US dollar, and so on. I mean, before that, most currencies were backed by a physical commodity, and that was mainly gold. We look at that, and that's changed. The modern monetary policy is just to print the issue or the condition out. We're just putting more money into the economy. 2021 was a big player of that, and hence that there are a lot of bubbles that are sitting in the current stock markets, where a lot of companies were supported during those periods with a lot of their governments, but it didn't necessarily mean that what they were showing in their financial results was a result of actual real performance or support. And that's kind of where this kind of correction is going to be coming from.
Yeah, unfortunately, the thing is, there's no quick fix.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. There's no way that you simply get yourself out of this mess.
Yeah.
It's going to take time. It's going to take dedication. It's going to take sacrifice. To be honest, people are going to struggle. Economies are going to struggle, and eventually, if handled correctly, if approached correctly, then it'll sort itself out. But there's no quick fix. I mean, printing money, definitely not the answer. If we look at our neighbor Zimbabwe, what's happened there, it was a case of literally every 5 minutes there was another zero added to the value of their money. And I think that's the runaway effect. If you don't have something like gold or something physical backing your money, it's easy to just get completely out of hand, to have that runaway effect. And once that happens, there's no stopping it.
And Willem, you are raising some very poignant things right now, and this is also part of what we're going to be discussing over the next couple of installments of our podcast is inflation. And we've done case studies where we looked at Argentina and where they were 5 years ago to where they are now, and their peso versus a dollar, and also gold versus the peso and gold versus a dollar, and if you had invested in gold, what your wealth would be. We're definitely going to look at that. That will definitely be a full installment. We got a whole lot of things, but what we also now, we've spoken about the politics, we've spoken about economy, but now this is where we come in, and this is what we're passionate about, is we've realized that gold does have a place in the modern world. It is considered an alternative investment. If you look at your run-of-the-mill investments through the equities and through various policies that certain financial service providers offer. But I always ask this question is, if it's such an alternative investment, why do central banks buy physical bullion, physical gold, and the layperson is told that it's not for them? And our argument is it's absolutely for you. It's a tangible asset, it's liquid, it's geo-neutral. I can go with an ounce of gold anywhere in the world and I will have that price. If the rand chooses to devaluate to the dollar, my wealth held in gold doesn't lose value. As long as the price of gold continues to grow, and again, we look at stats. Over the last 50 years, gold has given a compound growth in dollars of 8% per annum, and that's KGOL. And amazingly with that is, if you look at the 80s and 90s, it was very lateral periods for gold as far as growth. But we see that it had a big pickup in the 2000s. There was a little bit of a pullback. But the whole truth here is, if you look at even currencies, and I'm talking dollar, rand, we see their growth pattern has diminished over periods of time. Whereas gold, yes, there's some downs, but it's dipping upward, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to remember is that this is not a short-term investment.
Absolutely.
It is, not something, I buy at the beginning of the year and I sell at the end of the... Although if you did that this year, you would actually have made yourself a nice profit. But it's not about a quick return. Gold is an investment. It's an investment for the future. It's something that you're investing in for 20, 30 years from now, perhaps even for your children. It's not a quick investment. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. And I think that's one of the most important things that people don't understand about this type of investment is, they look at the stocks, they look at the returns, and they think, oh, okay, well, this is what I can get out in this period of time. Gold is over the long term. And as you said, 50 years, if we go back and we take a look at the past 20 years, the growth of gold, you're looking at I think it was something like 1,400, 1,500% growth in South African rands.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of growth we're looking at. And 20 years is not that long ago.
No, and again, I think that's the important thing, is we are looking at generational wealth. I mean, it's one of the key phrases we use as a company, is it's not about buying today and selling tomorrow. It's about accumulating wealth in bits and pieces, if need be, or you can buy it in chunks, but holding that wealth over the longer period. And gold has shown that it is that vehicle. It will mitigate a lot of losses that inflation offers or gives, and it will also negate a lot of depreciation in currencies like the rand, the loss of the rand to dollar, the loss of the dollar to pesos, and so on. Even when the dollar loses value, gold is still a hedge. And I mean, Nigeria is a perfect example of that, where Nigerians and the Naira, has also fallen off a cliff in relation to the dollar and forced Nigerians to look at dollars and they hold dollars as a form of wealth preservation. We subsequently have been doing a case study there, and if they'd actually held onto gold instead of dollars, they'd be that much more wealthy, or they'd have more wealth amassed and held in the form of gold.
Yes. No, but I think that's a trend you see in most currencies. There is, I think, what was the average lifespan of a fiat currency is something like
27
years.
Yeah.
While gold has been a form of currency for over 5,000 years,
if not more.
And throughout all that time, I mean, you look back at the days when the Roman soldiers were paid in gold, your centurions, and if you look at the relative buying power of the gold that they were paid back then, it is equivalent to a modern army, U.S. Army captain's salary. It has the same buying power. So that just means the power of that gold is, from back then till now, has retained that value, that buying power, and that's, as we say, preservation of wealth, building generational wealth. That's what we're about.
Yeah, and spot on. And again, that is, again, we take the same story of currencies. What $100 would have bought you 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, or 100 rand, what that would have bought you, 100 pounds, what that would have bought you. And we see inflation is just destroying wealth, and people's income, has not risen to the same levels as the growth in inflation, and it is a problem. The biggest thing now is retirement. Where do I put my money? And again, we're going to put a whole segment on that where we'll talk about where we compare my personal RA, which is with a reputable company, and we compare it that if I had bought gold on the same monthly premiums, what that would be equal to versus the actual current value of that RA. And that's ultimately is what we want to achieve here with this channel, is to just empower, get information out there, because we know that, and gold has proven itself, bullion has proven itself to be a holder of wealth. And ultimately, the more we can get that message out there, the better.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah. I think of a story of my dad, and that was what even got me into looking into precious metals. He's worked his whole life, and he's a proudly South African, and yet we'll talk about the Rand and South Africa and the performance of where we are as a country, and as far as holding Rand-based assets. And for me to know that he spent his whole life working his butt off, and literally at the click of a finger, that if most of his Rand-based investments are in Rands, the reality is that overnight that wealth can be lost. And literally we'll talk about it when we talk about Argentina and Zimbabwe, that overnight, just with the currency devaluation, and that's nothing the layman in the street, the person in the street cannot control those factors. And that is where gold has shown that it's about personally empowering. It's about making sure you can actually start to take some back on how you control things, where a system is controlling you. And I'm not big on those kind of conspiracy things, but it's about personal empowerment. And gold, in my mind, is definitely one of those assets that allows you that.
Yes, definitely. It's about controlling what you can. And gold is one way of actually taking charge of your personal finances, of controlling things that are within your power to control.
Yeah. I think for now today, it's been, considering the conditions of us putting this first podcast together, I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for what it brings. And again, subscribe, click on the link below, do all those things that are necessary to make it happen. And we are here to always answer questions. If anyone gets part of this YouTube or whatever channel it's projected onto, and they want information, don't hesitate, contact us. We're more than happy to help you make an educated decision. There's many times I've spent 2-3 hours on a call, and at the end of the day the person's gone and purchased bullion from some other person or from another country. But for me, it's more about the message behind it, and it's about that shift in thinking. It's a paradigm shift, and that's ultimately what we are about and what we want to promote.